Hello and welcome to MacFormat's weekly Apple Extravaganza. I'm Matt Bolton.
I'm Kat Ellis.
And this week we're going to be talking about new ways to buy things,
Free-to-play apps,
and a smart thermostat that isn't owned by Google. We start as ever with news from the world of Apple. And we start as ever with 5 minutes on news from the world of Apple. I am doing Apple this week because Chris Finn is on holiday, which is why Kat has deigned to join us. She's the managing editor of MacFormat's sister titles in computing, titles like PC Format, which is like MacFormat, but you can probably tell the difference. This week I want to talk about the fact that it looks like Apple is finally adding promo codes to in-app purchases, or the option to give promo codes to anyone you like, I suppose. Ever since the App Store was launched many years ago, sort of 5-ish years ago, but I can't remember exactly how long, there's always been promo codes so that developers could give away copies of their app to journalists or to friends or to anyone really who they want to try it. Apple's always been a bit difficult about it because at first you could only have, I think it was 50, and now you can have 100, which is at least a half decent amount. But they never let you do promo codes for in-app purchases, which is difficult for apps that are free to download and then have a single unlock, because there's no real way for them to let someone try the full version. And that includes things like education apps, where there's a single unlock, or even just multiple unlocks to unlock new tools, rather than the kind of gouging something berries, I'm not going to slander anyone, way of approaching things. Someone who's a friend of MacFormat, Fraser Spears, he works with iPads in education, and he says this is possibly a really important thing because it's a step towards volume purchases that you would need in a business or an education system to make the iPad generally more useful. But generally it's just potentially a big step forward, and quite an important one, because in-app purchases clearly aren't going away, no matter how much people do or don't like them, ultimately. You're an Android user,
yes, I am.
right? Yeah. Do you know, it's mostly a free a free thing on Android, isn't it, that people buy? Yeah. Do you buy lots of in-app purchases?
I don't actually. Most of what I buy is music, so no, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Really.
But then you got things like, now at least Spotify could give, or well, Spotify could always give people trials because they've got you don't have to go through in-app purchases to go through them. You could go through their website and try out. But similar services that do rely entirely on in-app stuff can at least finally give out promo codes for you to try, say, a free month or something like that. It's the real question is why it's taken this long at this point, because it's always been clearly something that people would need at some point. If in-app purchases were always going to take off, then you have to ask kind of why Apple held off. Presumably it can't be that complicated. He says, like a non-programmer, it can't be that complicated. If you can enable it for one type of purchase, presumably you can enable it for others. But Apple does strange things for strange reasons, in strange ways. So, shrug. But what's interesting is there's always been a way to slightly get around the in-app purchase thing, depending on how you set up your app. Because if your in-app purchase is tied into a back end of your creation, and your users signed in with a username, i.e. not just using like Game Center or their Apple ID, if they had to set up a username for you, then you could gift them whatever you wanted just on your own server, on your own back end. You didn't need Apple's involvement at all. But that would that either meant a big investment in building the infrastructure or buying someone else's infrastructure. But it used to surprise me because people would say, there's no way to gift in-app purchases at all. And I said, well, I've been gifted one, but not in the way you mean. It is possible. And a lot of people, it never occurred to them that it was even, a lot of developers, I should say, that it was even possible. But at least now it is finally possible for everyone. And hopefully we'll see a few more hopefully it'll allow more flexibility, because it means the developer doesn't have to choose between in-app purchases or being able to send it out for promotion for review.
So do you think this is going to help you at MacFormat with reviewing, to be able to give the in-app purchases a try?
Say I'm unhappy about it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to totally revolutionise our reviews, but it does mean that there's a few more apps that we wouldn't have tried before that maybe we can now.
Yep.
So let's move on to the wider world of tech.
Okay, Matt, I know you're a bit of a gamer, so this one should interest you. I was reading a survey recently saying that 50% of the profits or the income for mobile games on the App Store come from just 0.2% of the players.
They call them whales.
Yes, they do indeed, yes.
Which is a gambling term, which probably tells you quite a lot about it.
Yeah, it's one of the sort of shady tactics that some of the bigger free-to-play app developers use. They sort of play into that mentality.
Psychological
you keep
tactics,
paying in, and eventually you might get a payback. They just keep feeding your pennies in. Yes, and obviously this applies to other apps as well as games. If you're looking down the App Store, the average price of an app or a mobile game is, if not free, then it's a few pence. And it's a question of, is this really fair to indie app developers who they don't have the resources to say a load of ads? They're sort of relying almost exclusively on sales for their profits, and they don't have the reputation of a big company like Zynga or anyone.
Well, yeah, Zynga's
reputation is relative.
But the recognisability, absolutely, yeah. It's you mean kind of, is it sustainable?
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's. I know this is there's loads of different sides to this, which like I happen to have been reading about this week as well. Yesterday, for us when we're filming this, not necessarily for you when you're watching it. Thomas Was Alone was released on iPad, which is an indie game that was first released on PC a few years back, and the chap who developed it, Mike Bithell, has been saying, I'm pretty sure that's how we pronounce his name, has been saying he thinks you need to already have a level of recognisability and respectability on another platform before you launch on iPad, if you're unknown, if you're not a Zynga, because then your existing fans might go and buy it and give you an early boost, and they'll review it, and there'll be real reviews, and they'll help boost you up the charts, and you might get Apple's attention better if you were already hit on. It probably doesn't have to be on Mac, but if you were, for example, on Mac, and he's selling Thomas Was Alone for about a $5, something like that. I guess he's reasonably confident that he doesn't need to cut the price.
That's true.
But
I guess,
there absolutely has been the race to the bottom generally, as you say, especially for unknown apps.
And sort of mobile apps are seen as sort of a less expensive way into development. The development costs for an app are relatively low compared to a PC game, for example. So it's kind of,
especially for graphics and stuff like that. But compared to a console game, if you need to like buy a dev kit or something like that, then it's
pretty easy.
No, absolutely.
So it's kind of, you think maybe need to look at it the other way around and need to put the investment in on another platform to begin with.
That's what he was saying is what platforms that haven't already experienced the race to the bottom, if you can launch on them and get a reputation at a reasonable price, and then you already build a sustainable business from that, and then launch on the App Store, and you can play around with the price, but the point is that some of the marketing will have already been done, because some people would already know and respect.
Although there is still the race to the bottom starting to happen on other platforms, like particularly the PC, because Valve recently announced that developers on Steam will soon be able to start setting their own prices, and sort of making Steam a bit more like an app store. And there's already a few free games on there, but it kind of puts the pressure on a bit more.
They've also, Steam is going that way increasingly, generally with Greenlight.
Yes.
They're getting which is great for indies, but they're getting so many things on there now that it's starting to feel less and less like a curated thing, and more like the App Store, which is just a sea of everything. And I think that's that's inevitably what pushes the race to the bottom, is the sheer range of stuff. The competition is so wide that it's being pushed down, and it is. I don't know if I would say necessarily unfair on indies, because they know what they're getting into, but it is certainly potentially skewed against them. Especially, you need to be in the charts if you want to do gangbusters. And yes, I said that word. But the biggest stuff in the chart is the biggest name that go in the charts, and it's self-perpetuating. Yeah. It's always Minecraft at number 1 or number 2 or number 3. And if you want to compete with Minecraft, well, you don't compete with Minecraft. Basically, is the gist of it. All right, now let's look at our little bit of kit for this week. This week we've got something that we can't really demonstrate because it is a thermostat. It's from a company called Heat Miser. That's
a very attractive name.
Yes, that's a good point. That hadn't occurred to me. Heat Miser with what they call the Neo Hub. Basically, it replaces your normal thermostat. It's got all the connections at the back. Pop your old thermostat out, pop the Heat Miser in, and it can be wirelessly controlled from your smartphone or from various other ways. Tablets, for example, Android and iOS, and it's fairly cross-platform. It's a smart thermostat, a bit like the Nest, which is kind of the best-known smart thermostat that Google just bought. And the point is that it's learning, just like the Nest as well. So you tell it, you set the times that you would like it to be warm. You said, I want it to be 21 degrees in here. That's quite hot. I want it to be 18 degrees in here in the morning by 9 o'clock.
You get up a lot later than I do.
Yes. I live just around the corner. It's really good.
Jammy.
Yeah, so you say, I want it to be 18 degrees by 9 o'clock. And then it knows how long your room takes to heat up. It learns that over time by just keep measuring the temperature. And then what it will then do is adjust when it comes on to make sure that it's always at that temperature by 9. So on really cold days, it comes on earlier, comes on at the right time to heat up. On hot days, it comes on later, and it just learns that automatically over time. You can set it up in like zone systems, so the top floor is separately controlled to the bottom floor, and they do one that works with underheating for conservatories and stuff like that. That all work together, and yes, it's all powered through the hub by Zigbee mobile networking, and it's a little family company, so they're super enthusiastic.
How long are they going to be around for?
Well, we'll see how well this does when it takes off. Yes, that's possibly a concern.
Invest in a whole system for your home, and then oops.
They sound pretty stable actually, because they're trying to sell through builders and kind of equipment manufacturers. They're starting to try to make a name for themselves, hence the new branded stuff and the starter kit that we've got here. You can buy like a separate thermostat to add on to this kit as the starter. It's a bit like something like the Philips Hue. You must have the starter kit with the base station, then you can just add various bits on.
Do you know how much they cost, the starter kits?
Do you know? They told me and I've completely forgotten.
Did it strike you as, oh my god?
It struck me as about normal price for this kind of thing. Nothing super extravagant. It's nowhere near as fancy a design and colours and stuff as the Nest. It looks like a fairly normal thermostat.
It needs to be. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Really.
Does the job exactly. Speaking of Philips Hue, I spoke to them about whether they would tie it into any other systems, like If This Then That, so that you could do various setups, control half your house at once. I want the heating and the lights to all come on at certain times, but they said they're looking into it, but that there are no promises of anything. At the event I went to see them at, Philips was actually also there. So I think we're looking into it was possibly a sense of, I just went to chat to Dave, and then he said maybe, but I don't know. But yes, it's an interesting one because for a time Nest was one of the few smart thermostats, and there was a company called Lightwave RF that also made a sort of a smart thermostat. I don't know if they made one that actually replaced your existing thermostat like this one does. I wish it didn't rattle when I'm talking.
It won't do when it's mounted on the wall, presumably.
No, no, except in an earthquake when everything is rattling, so you're not really concerned about that.
If your bedroom is like 21 degrees or not is probably a fairly minor consideration at that point.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if you're in San Francisco, it's always 21 degrees. It's always nice there.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get the Heatmiser name out, and I asked them if they're going to sort of keep expanding the range. I think the answer was not immediately, but they...
Yeah, because I want to see how well it does.
But they will do. I'd be interested to see... I mentioned it to them, and they didn't say much about it. There's the company Lightwave RF does radiator valve replacements, so it can control all your radiators individually from a central thermostat. Sort of cleverly, without you having to have proper zoned heating installed. So that seems like a good expansion, but at the moment I think they're just focusing on normal installation type
Do you
setups.
install it yourself, or do you need to get someone in to do it?
You can install it yourself as long as you're confident, I guess, because it is just pop the old one off the wall, unscrew all these bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I think if you've done a light switch, you'd probably be okay yourself. If you've done a mains socket in your home, it's essentially the same principle, or even wired in an oven, I guess. As long as you are confident you can get all the wires in the right place, because there's a lot of holes, then I think you'd be okay. I'm sure the company would recommend you get an electrician in.
That's true.
So I don't want to speak for them, but I'm telling you it's fine, go ahead. So assuming that you don't try this and electrocute yourself, let us know what you think of all of this stuff in the comments below. Will the ability to do promo codes for IAPs or potentially even volume purchase for IAPs really help in business or education situations, or is it just further pushing IAPs, and IAPs are bad, some people think? Do you? Let us know in the comments. Oh yeah, and then more about IAPs. That was what we did in the second one as well.
Is a free-to-play structure fair for indie app developers? Is there an alternative to the race to the bottom? Is there a way of sort of putting the brakes on that?
How would you fix the App Store? And finally, would you buy a new smart thermostat, or do you rely entirely on electrician? Would you get a proper setup installed rather than tinkering around with improving your house yourself? Absolutely do let us know in the comments.
Would you risk electrocution and certain death?
Yes, would you risk those things? And don't forget that you can subscribe for all of our future episodes at youtube.com/MacFormatUK. You can view our previous episodes from this and many other videos. And you can go to macformat.com/iPad to try a free trial of our interactive iPad App Edition magazine. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Let me have a heads up. How crazy is this going to be? I'm glad I opened this first.
Yeah, oh no, this is the computer. I'm getting all of this done.
It's alright, it's on the main one.
It wasn't fragile, was
It's
it?
not an expensive piece of kit, though.